Hey everybody, it's Mike. Welcome to Chip Damage. You know what? I think 2023 is going to be a pretty good year for gaming. Yeah, here we are a month and a half into the year and there's already been some good releases, but looking forward, I was kind of going down my list of games coming out. I was wondering, I was looking, I'm like, man, there's some heavy hitters this year. Yeah, the year 2023, some of gaming's oldest and biggest franchises all are having a big outing, having a big release. And I think that's fantastic. It's kind of a weird year. We are now 2.5 years into the 9th generation of consoles. The PS5 and Xbox Series X are now kind of easier to get in most regions. However, it feels like this generation really hasn't had a full start until very recently. And to some, it really hasn't started yet. And the Switch is getting long in the tooth, launching back in 2017, but it has a ton of steam and an incredible library and a continuing library of games yet to be released. So we're kind of in an odd, nebulous point where the generation proper, the two of the big three are kind of really gearing up, while one of the big three is kind of nearing the end of its console lifetime, but is still going strong. So going forward, I was looking, I'm like, wow, this could be a really good year, one of the best years in gaming in recent memory. So with that said, with this video, I want to look at what's coming out in the remainder of 2023, what I'm looking forward to, and this will also give you an insight into some of the videos that I will be doing further in this year, whether they be unboxings, revealings, whatever. And I want to have your input as well. What are you looking forward to 2023? What are some of the smaller games that I have missed or games that I've kind of disregarded that you would recommend? And let me know what you think of the games that I'm about to talk about, and what do you think about where this generation currently is? Like I said, we're in a weird time with the PS5, Series X, and Switch. PC games going strong. However, some PC ports recently have been strangely not good, like Callisto Protocol and Forspoken and whatnot. It's a very bizarre time. So with all that said, without further ado, let's jump into it. If you like what you're about to hear, if you're interested, please like, subscribe, and do all that other YouTube stuff. So let's begin. It's already mid-February, and there's been 1 or 2 big launches already. What am I currently playing that's brand new and something that I can recommend? Well, this one's kind of nebulous, kind of niche, I should say, and that would be Final Fantasy Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. What a mouthful. I'm currently playing that on my PS5. If you don't know, that's a rhythm game where you play through the various musical history of the Final Fantasy series. It is the first time it has been released on a console proper, the prior 2 installments only being on the Nintendo 3DS, and it is fantastic. I've been putting a lot of hours into this recently. I love video game music. Final Fantasy probably has the largest and best catalog of video game music out there. I do fully suggest it. The only thing I do not like about it is that if you get the digital version over the physical version, you get 27 exclusive songs, which kind of pisses me off because I prefer to get my games physical, but when they gate content like that to a digital version, I have to get it. Those 27 songs are not small either. They are vocal tracks, like the main theme from Final Fantasy X and melodies of life from Final Fantasy IX. So yeah, if you're gonna get Theatrhythm Final Bar Line, I would suggest the digital version, but definitely check that out. That is what I've been playing this month. But let's talk about what's upcoming now. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is something that just released digitally and is having a physical release upcoming on February 22nd. And that is the remaster, but nearly remake of this gem right here, Metroid Prime, originally released in the GameCube way back in 2002. This is a lot of people's favorite game, period. The GameCube was a console that did not sell a ton of units or have a huge library of games, but the library of games it did have was outstanding. And one of the standouts in that incredible library was the original Metroid Prime. Now, 6 years ago, Nintendo announced that Metroid Prime 4, after a long dormancy, would be releasing on the Nintendo Switch, and we still haven't seen that. That is still vaporware. However, in order to tide fans over, they shadow dropped Metroid Prime Remastered on the Switch. About a week or so ago on a Nintendo Direct, they just showed off an incredible looking trailer for the remaster of this game and released it immediately following that Direct digitally. It is quite the remaster if you haven't seen it. Most people say it's more of a remake. It is incredible looking. Comparable to Halo 2 to Halo 2 Anniversary, if you're familiar. Even if you've already played the original Metroid Prime, the new one offers control options and is such a visual upgrade that it's worth getting. With that said, they also announced a physical version, and you can just tell that this is going to be a limited physical version. It was put up on various retailers like Amazon, GameStop, and Best Buy, and for pre-order, and it keeps selling out and then restocking, selling out and restocking. A game like that was so quickly released post-announcement, you could just tell it's going to be a collector's item. Plus, it's Metroid Prime. Like, it's a very beloved series. It's going to be something hard to get, and I want the physical version of that. The game deserves it. Now, a lot of people are disappointed that it's not like the remastered trilogy of Metroid Prime 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 originally releasing on the GameCube and 3 releasing on the Wii. Those 3 games were slightly remastered and brought together as the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii. And that's not what got remastered, only the original. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with 2 and 3 before 4 is released. Will they be re-released at all? Will they get remasters akin to what Metroid Prime 1 received? Or will they simply get re-releases without the extra bells and whistles that this release got because they're not quite as beloved as the original? We don't know. I would like to see them all get the same treatment, but at the very least, I would like to see the whole Metroid Prime trilogy playable on the Switch before Metroid Prime comes out. In Metroid 4 comes out, in order to get everyone up to speed and just to replay these excellent games and let them be more accessible to the newer generation. However, I'm very happy with the result of the Metroid Prime remaster. Like I said, it's out right now digitally, but the physical, which I'm looking forward to, is launching on February 22nd. Definitely check that out if you're a collector, if you're just looking for a really good game to play on your Switch. And sticking with the Switch, and jumping over to one of my favorite, if not my favorite action franchise of all time, Bayonetta. On March 17th, we are getting Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon, which is a spin-off of this amazing title from last year, Bayonetta 3. Now, I don't know, guys. I have aired my grievances and my umbrage with this release before, but what is this game? Bayonetta Origins is just that. It is a prequel where you play as Bayonetta when she was a young girl. And there was a kind of preview level, like a demo almost of that in Bayonetta 3, like a secret level where you play as young Bayonetta. And it was very odd. It is not a third-person action game akin to the rest of the series. It is like an isometric storybook, watercolored, like cel-shaded, like adventure where you kind of do light puzzle solving as young Bayonetta named Cereza, and it looks to be in the new game that you're going to have Cheshire the Demon, shown originally in Bayonetta 3, kind of as a helper who does the combat for you, and you kind of control each of them with a stick, and it's just a bizarre release in the terms that Bayonetta as a trilogy, particularly the first 2 games, was more an homage to the action game genre being made by the developer Platinum Games, who are former Capcom devs, headed by Hideki Kamiya, who made games like Devil May Cry and Ninja Gaiden and worked on Okami and Resident Evil. And it was kind of like a mashup of those IPs as well as like some Sega IPs with Sega owning the actual property with, like, you know, Halo's kind of being Sonic's rings and afterburner levels. It was kind of like story second, but fun and action first. And it seems like now they're kind of leaning into the story, which I don't think most Bayonetta fans care about. Like I see some people online talking about it. I'm like, where are you story people coming from? This game was always kind of like combat and gameplay first and spectacle. So to make a full release that is strictly about the history of the character is bizarre. I think some of the best elements of Bayonetta are those references to other games. Like, you can unlock the red hot kick from Beautiful Joe and things like that. But like, what is this Origins game really going to be? And I'm also shocked that it's a full $60 release. It doesn't look to me, and who am I to judge? And I don't know how long or big the game is going to be. But it does not look to me like something that would normally get a physical release, which it is, and be $60. It would seem more like a spin-off title, a downloadable title. But because of that, I am interested. Platinum Games has very rarely ever let me down. And this is their main IP. Bayonetta is kind of like their mascot. So I will be picking it up. I am very interested in it, but I don't know if I want the direction of Bayonetta to go more story focused. This isn't what I go to this franchise for. But like I said, Platinum very rarely lets me down. I love Bayonetta 3. I don't think it was as strong as its predecessors, but it was still one of the best, if not the best pure action game I played last year. So I will be picking up Bayonetta Origins, Cereza, and the Lost Demon. And let me know what you guys think about this. I know there's some Bayonetta fans out there amongst my subscribers and commenters. Let me know, like, how weird is this game? Not only, first, and lastly, like, we waited let's see, 7-8 years for this game after Bayonetta 2, and then like 5 months after this drops, we're getting another Bayonetta like full title release. What do you guys think about all this? What do you think about the direction of Bayonetta? And what do you think? Are you going to be picking up Bayonetta Origins? Like I said, March 17th, I will be picking it up, and I will let you guys know all about it. But then, at the end of March, mere week later after that release, we are getting a huge one. We are getting the remake of one of the most beloved games, rightfully so, of all time. We are getting a remake of Resident Evil 4. Yes, another GameCube remake when you think about it. More GameCube lineage. And I'm excited for this, guys. Ever since the 2017 release of Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil really hasn't missed. Like, Capcom hasn't missed with Resident Evil. And they've been pumping out games at an alarming rate with that new RE engine, which does not stand for Resident Evil, by the way, the RE engine. It is Reach for the Sky. A little gaming trivia there. Bizarre. But like, Resident Evil 7 was wonderful. It's probably my second favorite Resident Evil after 4. Resident Evil Remake 2 was great. Resident Evil Remake 3, yeah, it was short, but it was still fantastic with like the best characterization of Jill and some really good gameplay implements. Resident Evil 8 was great. I still have yet to play the DLC for Resident Evil 8, but I really loved it. Not as much as 7, but it was still really, really solid. So now, next up, kind of disappointingly skipping over Code Veronica, which is definitely the game that needs a remake the most, because that game could be a little hard to play, and it's kind of the least. It is a mainline game, but because it doesn't have a number attached, most people kind of skip it. But it does star Claire Redfield and has Chris Redfield and Wesker, and it is important to the lore. And it is still in the old tank control styles of the older Resident Evils. So I think that game needed a remake more than 4. But that's not what we're getting, at least not right now. Maybe they'll revisit later. Originally, I was very opposed to the idea of a Resident Evil 4 remake because this game has been released on every console under the sun for the last, like, 18 years. Everything other than the original Xbox. It was on the GameCube, it was on PS2, it was re-released on PS3 and 360, the Wii, the Switch, the PS4, PC, Xbox One, what have you. And Resident Evil 4 holds up wonderfully. I'm actually replaying it right now one more time before the new one comes out. And I'm like, yeah, it's still one of the best games of all time. It still looks good when brought up to 1080. And I really don't know what can be improved. Like, Resident Evil 1's remake was a strict upgrade. It contained the control of the original versions, but graphically it's still amazing, the Resident Evil 1 remake. And they added things like Lisa Trevor and what have you, like story elements, and is considered one of the best remakes of all time. And it was strictly a replacement for Resident Evil 1 in a lot of ways. Resident Evil 2's remake was very different, where it's like a completely different style of game. Yes, you're Leon and Claire in the police station, but it is the third-person shooter style, over-the-shoulder style, as opposed to the tank controls. So they kind of stand side by side. I don't see Resident Evil 2's remake as a complete replacement for the original, but they're two great games side by side. Resident Evil 3 is kind of the same thing, where it's like side by side. There are some features that are missing from the original, like mercenaries mode and the like clock tower scenes that really pissed fans off from the original. But the remake is still great. It's more action focused, and Jill herself is fantastic, and the boss encounters were kind of upgraded. But Resident Evil 4 is the first one where it is a remake of the over-the-shoulder style. This is where I kind of have my opinion on this game. I think the Resident Evil 4 remake is going to be a great game. I don't think it could be as good as the original, and I think it's going to be fairly close, but I think they're going to change enough to make it an interesting and really good game. I think it's going to be a great game. Do I think it's going to replace or be better than the original? Hell no. But I'm very interested in getting it. And I own this game a lot. And I'm a fan. I got it on GameCube. I got the expanded version on PS2. I got it downloaded on the 360. This version I'm playing right now, the remastered PS4 version, the most modern version, the one I'd kind of suggest. I played it on the Wii. I am a fan, and I love this game. And like I said, I don't think it needs a remake. I think if you this is enough. But more Resident Evil, the better. It's not going to replace this one. I think it's just going to go side by side with it. And yeah, look forward to that on March 24th. I was lucky enough to snag the GameStop exclusive version, the collector's edition in North America, which is following suit with the Resident Evil 7, 2, 3, and 8 collector's edition that all come with statues. The Resident Evil 4 edition, a special edition, will be coming with a statue of Leon. That sold out very quickly. I was lucky to get one. It was one per customer. Look forward to an unboxing of that when one of the greatest games of all time, Resident Evil 4, is released on March 24th. And Capcom is just killing it. Later, the month after that, in April, another one of Capcom's largest IPs, oldest IPs, is getting a big release. We are going to get a collection of the Mega Man Battle Network series. Yes, this is a number of games. I think it's like 10 games are getting released on the Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. And it is all the Mega Man Battle Network games. It's like Mega Man Battle Network 1, both versions of like 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm not super familiar with these games. I've played them a little bit. They are set in like a future or different continuity than the other Mega Man games, and they are not platformers per se. They're kind of like RPGs with like real-time grid-based combat, and they're very cool. I kind of missed them. They were mostly Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS games back in the day, and they have a very strong following, and it's fantastic to see these portable games get some preservation on modern day consoles. These games were downloadable on the Wii U Virtual Console, and they came with additional features that weren't easy to ascertain here in the West, like e-reader bonuses and like fully decked out things. Like they were very complete versions on the Wii U, but we're getting them on the PS4, Switch, and Xbox One now. So let's see how that turns out. Hopefully they retain all those features from the Wii U that were added and they're enhanced. And this is following a great line of Mega Man re-releases that Capcom's been doing over the last generation, including Mega Man Legacy Collection 1, that was 1 through 6, Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, that had 7 through 10. Then you had the X and X2 collection, that was Mega Man X1 through X8, which was fantastic. 2 years ago, we got the Mega Man Zero ZX collection, which had 6 games on it. That was fantastic. So yeah, Mega Man is being preserved. I gotta say that Capcom is doing a great job preserving a lot of their classic games in many, many ways. I'm just really hoping for a Mega Man like Legends collection. I love Mega Man Legends, and yes, they are. The last time those games were readily available was on the PlayStation 3 downloadable service, the PSN, and that's not enough. That was a number of years ago, and they were some of the last games released on the PSN, big releases. That's Mega Man Legends 1, 2, and Misadventures of Tron. Mega Man Legends 1 is a decently expensive game, under $100. Mega Man Legends 2 is a little over $100, but like Tron like $1,000 now. It's a game I don't have. A good friend of mine has, and it's like a gem of his that I'm very jealous of. I've played through it on the PSN, and they're all great. Even Tron, which is a weird spinoff, like all 3 of those games are fantastic. Of course, they'll probably never finish, but the next collection I really want after this Battle Network collection would be a Legends collection. We'll probably get a Star Force collection, the kind of the sequel series to Battle Network. But I'm looking forward to playing through a couple of these. Particularly, I've heard that Mega Man Battle Network 3, up to 3, is the best one. And yeah, something to look forward to. I got to say, yet again, Capcom is doing a good job with these collections. They also did the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary collections, which had like arcade versions of like 12 Street Fighter games. They did Devil May Cry HD collection, versions of 1, 2, 3. Recently, they did the Capcom Fighting collection. Capcom is really like redeeming themselves from the prior decade, where they had a lot of issues. A lot of their classic titles from like the NES onwards are being preserved, and that's more than I can say for a lot of companies. Like, they're doing a better job than Nintendo at re-releasing their classic games. I really appreciate that. And they're also bringing new life into classic titles like Resident Evil 4. I am sad that Capcom put so much effort into Monster Hunter, which is not really a franchise that I'm an incredible fan of. I respect it, but it's not my thing. It doesn't have the personality a lot of their older and other IPs. However, I got to say, Capcom is really killing it recently, and that is why I'm looking forward to the Mega Man Battle Network collection coming out April 18th, physically and digitally. And then, back to the Switch, we are having, of course, one of the biggest releases of the year, one of the most high-profile releases of the year, and that is a sequel to this game, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, with Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, a game that's been in development for a long time. Zelda has never been one of my favorite franchises. I've always respected and liked it. But, I am interested in this new release. I will not be getting the collector's edition just based on the fact that not only would it have been hard to get, but I'm not a big enough fan to drop the 130 on it. But I will be getting the physical edition day one just to kind of check it out. With Breath of the Wild is really a miracle. Zelda has been a very important franchise in gaming for 35 years now. But it's never actually been one of the biggest sellers, which is shocking when you look back. Skyward Sword and the Wii only sold 3 million copies, and Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, my favorite Zelda game, like they're never like these huge, massive sellers. They sell well, but they review through the roof, and they're very important and remembered and beloved. But Breath of the Wild was the first game that like broke through that ceiling. Breath of the Wild reviewed incredibly well. It was a launch title for the Switch and the last Nintendo first-party game on the Wii U, and it's like sitting around like 30 million copies now, 29 million copies. It's the fourth highest selling game on the Switch, right behind Smash Brothers, and that's incredible. I'm pretty sure like the Breath of the Wild sold like combined sales more than the next like 5 Zelda games combined. Breath of the Wild is almost spinning off into its own like subcategory, like its own sub-series beyond Legend of Zelda. Like it's not the next Legend of Zelda in a lot of people's minds. It's the next Breath of the Wild with Tears of the Kingdom. And Zelda has had more representation on the Switch than I think Zelda has ever had at any other console prior. Not only have we had Breath of the Wild, we've had the re-release of Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. We've had Hyrule Warriors' a sequel, The Age of Calamity. We had the fantastic re-release of Link's Awakening. We had the HD re-release of Skyward Sword. We had Crypt of the Necrodancer Zelda expansion. There's been a lot of Zelda love on the Switch, and I'm glad to see the Breath of the Wild is doing that. There are some releases I still really want, like the HD version of Wind Waker to come to the Switch off the Wii U, because that's like my favorite Zelda ever. But Zelda, it looks like we're getting one last big hurrah with that with Tears of the Kingdom, which looks to be a straight direct sequel to Breath of the Wild. Some people are kind of lamenting the fact that it looks to be set in the same world and what have you. But you know what? I think there are some cool things that they can do with it. I would love to see the return of Ganondorf as like a person instead of like a cloud of like evil and darkness. That's something I would like to see, because I love Ganondorf as a character. When he's done right, he's kind of the focused on villain. So we'll be checking it out. That game was announced quite a while ago, and of course with the pandemic slowing everything down, that looks to be one of the last large releases for the Switch, but I could be totally wrong with that. Following that, there's Pikmin, which isn't a huge release, but it is a decent sized release, and Metroid Prime 4 is almost certainly coming out after that, but we're going to see, and I'm sure many people who own a Switch will be picking up Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom when it releases this May 12th, and I will be picking that up. Then we have a nebulous release, a release that's kind of up in the ether on the exact release date, somewhere before probably March 31st in spring from Square Enix, and that is kind of the contentious Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection. Okay, I have a lot to say on this, guys. So what is this? Within the last almost 2 years, Square Enix has been remastering their first 6 Final Fantasy games, the 2D ones, and releasing them strictly at first on mobile phones, which is just infuriating. And then they released them on Steam, which is good, but they have not had console re-releases. Like, these would have been perfect for consoles, like right from the get-go. So Final Fantasy 1 through 6 with redone sprite work and kind of a restoration of their original battle systems. And they are somewhat contentious, and I'll get into why, but they are finally getting a physical release and a digital release on the Switch and PlayStation line of consoles. Now this, we'll get into what they are in a second, but the release is a little funny. Square Enix dropped the pre-order for the physical version of these games in the middle of the night a few months ago for the Switch and PlayStation version. I was lucky enough to be awake and see that they came up. And there were 2 versions, and they were kind of insane. There was the standard edition for Switch and PS4 that just is a physical version of 1 through 6 that was like $75, $70 base, like just right off the bat, like that much money for those 6 games, like just one disc or cart, which was kind of nuts. But I'm like, it's a lot of games, and they sell them for like $10 to $15 on Steam, so I get it. Still a little annoying, but the shipping cost is like $23. Like, and this was a big point of umbrage for a lot of people who bought this. So like overall, like it was $100 game. And I'm like, okay. And then there was the limited edition, which came with a nice art book and some, in a big box and some, like a history book of the first 6 Final Fantasy games. It was like over $200, $250, and I believe with shipping, it came close to $300. And it was an immediate purchase. Like the second this is very unlike most retailers. The second you pre-ordered it, you paid for it, which I don't like because like I'm paying for something that I won't have for months. Like it's not physically made yet and being shipped to me. So I decided against getting that. Not only was it an insane amount of money for what it was, like I love these games, but I'm really getting them for Final Fantasy 4 and 6. I'm glad to have them physically, but $300 was just ridiculous. Regardless, I'm excited for this, and I will be getting that regular edition, the $75 version, which is still sold out. These games sold out like in a day. It was insane. I will be unboxing that. And I'm just annoyed because Square Enix is like acting like they're the Gucci of gaming. Given that Square Enix makes some of the greatest games of all time, why not make this widely available for your fans? Like, I get that it's only on your online store. That's fine. Not ideal, but that's fine because they are being released digitally on all storefronts anyway, and maybe a lot of people aren't interested in getting these games physically. They are older games. But why make them so limited? Yeah, the stupid $300 edition, make that limited if you want. It's probably a limited market. It's collectible, makes it cool. But the standard edition, why make that so limited? And why not make enough? Why not just keep making those? Like people want that. It's just to have it physically. Why make the normal edition so hard to get? Makes me mad. These are some of the most beloved RPGs of all time. This is not some niche. This is not Mana or Saga. This is Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VI is my favorite 2D RPG of all time. Even being out my second favorite, Chrono Trigger. I often go back and forth, but I think Final Fantasy VI has kind of landed as my favorite 2D RPG of all time. And I'm happy that people will be able to play digitally, but for collectors like myself, I'm a little sad about how hard it was going to get and how pricey it was. $23 to ship a standard disc. Amazon, if you have Prime, does it for free. If not, like $4 to $5. Even GameStop, $5, $6. Square, like, I get it's international, but $23 for something that's this big, like, come on. Regardless, I am excited to get it. Now, I must note a few things on this. The pixel remasters have a nice visual style. However, and this is another point of contention, they are not the ideal versions of the game. They have been reverted to essentially their launch versions in terms of combat and content with a new coat of paint. That's a little disappointing because there have been enhanced versions of 1 through 6 over the years with way more content and enhanced battle systems. If you were to ask me, and I have a video going over this, please check it out, like what the best versions of some of these games are, it's the handheld versions. Particularly, Final Fantasy 1 and 2 were released on the GBA, but then released later on the 20th anniversary for the PSP. And these are definitely, like, I prefer these versions over any other. I think the graphical style of these is still more appealing than what they're offering in the Pixel remasters. I think the Pixel remasters look nice, but I think, like, they don't hold a candle to what these releases did for 1 and 2. And these also had bonus dungeons and bosses that fit in really nicely and kind of enhanced the game. And they had more updated battle systems. I understand that some people really want those original ones, but I think overall, like, these versions are just better having played through both the original and these. Final Fantasy III is a really special case because it's the first time a 2D version is getting released in the West for that game. I have not played the 2D version of that, so I'm interested. That game had a 2.5D, 3D kind of remake for the DS that was later released on the PSP. So that's kind of cool. I can understand why they don't have the 3D version of that. However, Final Fantasy IV, which is many people's favorite, yet again, it was released on the GBA, slightly buggy version, but had more content. But then that version was upgraded and fixed with its content and brought over to the PSP version with the complete collection, which I'm holding right here. This is probably the best version of Final Fantasy IV. It also received a 3D remake that is also very good. But if you're looking for the best 2D version, it's this. Not only is this beautiful, it also comes with Final Fantasy IV, The After Years, which was a sequel that was originally only released on the downloadable Wii service. It's not fantastic, but it's cool to have. And the Interlude, an exclusive kind of bridging game, like short game between Final Fantasy IV and The After Years. All of that is gone from the Pixel remasters. And I can understand why Interlude and After Years aren't there, but the actual, like, extra dungeons and bosses and what have you and jobs, or not jobs, in this one, aren't going to be in the Final Fantasy IV. That makes me sad. The same thing, Final Fantasy V and 6 didn't get a re-release. on anything past the GBA, but the GBA versions added jobs to Final Fantasy V, which is a very important aspect to it. And Final Fantasy VI added summons to the Game Boy Advance version of Final Fantasy VI added summons to that game. Summons or espers are kind of like the main thing. And there were 4 big summons. I was trying to remember. It's like Diablos, Cactar, I forget the other 2 off the top of my head, but there were additional summons that give you abilities in 6. Those will not be in the Pixel remasters, which you can argue that they're more pure versions, like they're more straight re-releases with extra coats of paint of those versions. However, I would have liked to seen those additions through 1 through 6 because they've been so tweaked over the years. However, it is still nice to be able to play a version of these games that looks quite nice on your Switch or PlayStation. No Xbox for this one, sadly. I just have them, right there on the go on a modern platform. Are they ideal? No, but they look really nice, and they're all going to be in one nice set, both digitally and physically. And there's no set release date, probably April, May, tentative release date, May 31st on the website, but that's kind of a placeholder, just like spring 2023. So April or May, maybe June, maybe it's up to, we will be doing an unboxing of the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters right here. Please look forward to that. Looking forward to these. I just want to play Final Fantasy VI again. I love that game so much. But we must move on. Jumping back to Capcom, who's just killing it this year. Square and Capcom, like, you guys are doing good. We are going to be getting probably the game I will put the most amount of time into this year, and that is the sequel to this game. We will be getting Street Fighter VI. Finally, I am so excited to be talking about Street Fighter VI. Now, can you believe Street Fighter V is 7 years old? Yeah, February 2016 is when this came out. This is a 7-year-old game. This is a long time to wait for the next Street Fighter. Yeah, it's about as long between the original version of 4 and 5. Maybe not even, let's see. Yeah, a little shorter than that, but still, it was quite a long time to wait. Street Fighter VI has a lot of hype behind it. If you guys don't know, I'm a big fighting game fan. You probably know that from the channel. And Street Fighter V launched terribly. It only had 16 characters, which is good for other franchises, but for the main fighting game of the world, not enough, with no arcade mode, limited online functionality, and it was just like a very poor follow-up initially to Street Fighter 4. Now, after a few years, I would say after 3 years, two and a half years, with the release of Season 3, Street Fighter V started feeling like a real game, like a real follow-up to its predecessors. And then continued on to be really good. It ended up with 46 characters, a ton of stages, a lot of single player content, which I do like. Like, I like just doing arcade ladders and story modes and unlocking stuff in fighting games. I like going online and playing with my friends, of course, but you need to have a strong single player aspect. You need at least a damn arcade mode. Regardless, Street Fighter VI looks to remedy all of that. I'm a little disappointed that its launch roster, which was leaked, originally thought it was going to be 22 characters leaked, and they were all pretty much confirmed. But 4 of those characters look to be DLC. So the launch roster is 18. Not great, but not the worst. Like, yeah, it's 2 more than Street Fighter V. And it does matter to me because launch roster size not only gives players more options to jump into, but it varies what you're going to see online. It varies who you're going to fight against in arcade ladders. I like having a big ensemble cast, but 18 is just enough to pass by. They look to be a diverse set of characters. And this game has already had 2 betas, or demos rather, and I was lucky enough to be part of one. And I didn't really talk about it on this channel that much, but first off, let's just say Street Fighter 6, despite also launching on older consoles, Xbox One and PS4, looks incredible. I played the PS5 version for clarity, and the style is very urban, very harkening back to Street Fighter 3, but it still has 2.5D art direction. It looks fantastic. It's bringing back some of the ink look from Street Fighter 4 that 5 had, but not quite as strongly. It has great music, and just playing it, like, right off the bat, it had its own feel. It's bringing back some of people's favorite characters and mechanics, things like parrying, dash, and I was just experimenting with it online. Some great single-player features. It looks to be a whole open world, like, kind of single-player mode along with an arcade mode. Having played the demo, while waiting in the lobby online, just messing around, you can play classic Capcom games. In the little arcade section. Over the 3-day demo, they changed what the game was every day. One day it was Final Fight, one day it was Magic Sword, one day it was Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and you could just play that in Street Fighter 6 online too. Like I had a friend online join me in a match of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo in the lobby of Street Fighter 6. A lot of customization options for your kind of create a character avatar. You can make some real monstrosities. You can see those online. Those are pretty funny. And they're for your card as well, like your online card. You can set your stage. So a wild thing that I didn't realize is, let's say you're in a match with your buddy and you have a you have a stage set as your favorite, and they have a stage set as their favorite. You're playing on your stage, on your screen. You see your stage, they see their stage. So like a lot of the times people like to just have like the training stage set. You don't want to see the same stage all the time. You could set your own stage, play the same match. Two people are seeing two different things on two different TVs. Incredible little nuanced things like that. I really like. I like some of the character redesigns. I love the way Ken looks, and I like how Juri looks, and Chun-Li and Ryu. Like I really like it. Even Luke is the most boring character ever in the history of Street Fighter, one of them, but even he has a cooler look. Play as some of the new characters. Jamie, Jaime, however you want to say it, but they pronounce it Jamie, the announcer. Looks cool, but like kind of boring to play as. Like, I don't know. I know it's supposed to be like a drunken fighter, but I didn't really jive with him. However, Kimberly, the new ninja, like the new urban ninja, she's kind of a mix. She's like Guy's student from Final Fight and Street Fighter prior games, but she's also kind of like an Ibuki mix. Like, so she's kind of a mix between Ibuki and Guy, and she is very, very cool. Definitely got to check her out. Played some Juri. Kind of a mix, more Street Fighter 4 Juri with kind of some elements from Street Fighter 5, and like 3 supers, kind of 4 for everybody, because your ultra gets stronger if you have less health. Regardless, Street Fighter 5 looks like Street Fighter 6 looks like it's going to remedy a lot of what Street Fighter 5 did with its weak launch, because Street Fighter 5 never fully recovered from that bad launch. And Street Fighter V also only launched on the PlayStation 4 after having been multi-platform with Street Fighter 4. And eventually it would come to PC, but there was never... You cut off a large part of the audience. However, Street Fighter 6 is launching on PS4, PS5, PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and if I'm not mistaken, they're all going to have crossplay. So it's going to be a huge kind of mingling of players. It's going to have a huge player base. Everyone's going to be able to play with each other, and it's just going to be fantastic to have this great looking, feeling, and playing game, which I can tell you from experience will be fun. And everyone who wants to get it, unless like Switch, but come on, couldn't expect that. But like on all these other platforms, playing together this great this great fighting game. I cannot wait for this. Street Fighter 5 took too long to get strong, but I think 6 is going to be strong right out of the gate. I think I'm going to put a lot of time into this game. It's going to be a great year for Street Fighter, hopefully. So let's look forward to that when that finally drops on June 2nd. Yet again, in the United States, there's a GameStop exclusive special edition for this, like $250, quite a large edition that comes with like statues or figures of Kimberly and Luke. Luke's not one of my favorite characters, but this looks like a nice set. It's like a Metro City from Final Fight box set with art books and DLC for the first season and all that included. I will be getting that. I will be doing an unboxing, so please look forward to that. And please let me know, what are your thoughts on Street Fighter 6? Were you in the demo, and what are you hoping to see from future iterations of Street Fighter? And man, June is a busy month because I'm going to have to cut Street Fighter 6 off for a little bit to play the sequel to this game. We will be playing the sequel to Final Fantasy 15, the long-awaited Final Fantasy 16. Yes, and I have a lot to say on Final Fantasy 16. I'm going to try to be succinct. Can you believe that it has been like 7 years since Final Fantasy 15 launched way back in 2016, or was it 2015? I believe it was, I can't remember. I think it was 2015 that game finally launched. So it's been almost 8 years now, the end of it. And after a decade-long wait, like maybe it was 2016 that launched, I'm sorry. After a decade-long wait, originally being announced as Final Fantasy Versus 13 way back in like 2006, I want to say, Final Fantasy 15 came out and was good. However, there was a lot of caveats with it. You needed to watch the movie Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive, I forget what, in order to fully understand the story of Final Fantasy 15. Like, I don't care if you played it and understood most of it without watching that movie. If you didn't watch it, you didn't get the full context of the story. I think that was a mistake. The game was not really done when it came out. Like, I beat that game and platinumed it and loved it within the first month of its release. If I was to go back and play that game now, it'd be fully different. The ending has been changed. There's been a ton of DLC updates. There's been updates to the vehicle that allows it for room. 15 today is different than what it launched as. And I know it sold well, but I think at the end it wasn't quite ready. It was kind of a jumbled project. And 16 is very different. 16 announced back in 2020. It's bizarre to me. So to begin with, there doesn't seem to be any tie-ins with this game. This is going to be the first Final Fantasy in a while that you can just like kind of pick up and play. And I think that's a good strength of this game. Like, you don't need to watch a movie or an anime tie-in to really understand it. It seems to be kind of set in its own universe. Yeah, but while I find that as a strength, this game isn't marketed quite as highly as I thought it would be. Keep in mind, like, Final Fantasy from 7 onward, I'd say till like 7 until 13, were the series, the RPG series. And while I understand that JRPGs have lessened in popularity in the modern day, Final Fantasy is still a name that everyone listens to, pays attention to. But like, clearly Zelda is getting more marketing and attention than Final Fantasy. A couple years ago, flip that would be insane. A new Final Fantasy is coming out. That, like, people bought the PlayStation 1 for FF7. People bought the PlayStation 2 for FF10. And it's just really not that right now for 16. Like, the hype train is kind of low. They've shown some good trailers, and I'll talk about those in a second. But 16 itself, well, I think it'll be a good game. I just don't feel the buzz I did in years prior. And I don't think that's due to the age of the franchise or whatever, or the quality of the game. I think that it's just like a different time now. And it's also kind of diluted because we'll talk about it later. Final Fantasy VII Remake is kind of the big project that everyone's kind of keeping their eye on right now. I think more people are excited about Final Fantasy Remake Part 2, or Rebirth as it's known, than FF16. And that's supposed to launch later this year. It has no specified date, but like winter this year, early next year. Pretty close. So probably within 6 to 8 months of 16 is the follow-up to FF7. So that's taking some steam off of 16. This is a franchise that's been around since 1987, like, premiering in the same years like, Mega Man and Metal Gear, and right after Zelda, Metroid, and Mario, Super Mario, as it were. And I just feel like 16 should be bigger. It's a PlayStation console exclusive. I believe it's also launching on PC within a year afterwards. And it's sad for Xbox fans. I didn't expect this game to come to Switch, but the last prior couple Final Fantasy games have come to Xbox, and now it is going right back to PlayStation, given that the Final Fantasy VII Remake is PlayStation exclusive, console exclusive. But yeah, this game is also developed. Let's talk about the game itself. It is going back to a pseudo-medieval look, which it hasn't done in a while. Is being developed by the same team that does Final Fantasy XIV, the runaway success, I believe the most popular MMO in the world right now, surpassing World of Warcraft, at least recently in terms of mind share and quality. I hear brimming things. I'm not an MMO player. I've looked into it. I've done my research. I have friends who play this game. And I'm a little torn on that. There's some things that people are going to say, like Final Fantasy 16 is... It's been a while. I understand that no two Final Fantasies are quite the same. The first couple were medieval, and then like kind of 7 through 9 are kind of cyberpunky, kind of anime, even 10 to an extent, and 12 kind of changed that. 13 kind of went back to that. But I feel like going back, like when you look at the trailers and character models for 16, they don't initially jump out at you as Final Fantasy characters. They look like they can be from any RPG. And they look a little generic, and I hopefully my mind is changed. But you play as like, I think his name is Clive. Like Clive, I'm like, really? Like that, like they have the characters themselves, the world isn't jumping out at me. The general idea of the game is that there's like 6 foreign countries, and that they each have a summon called an icon that they can transform into. And now there's 2 in one country, and that's causing strife, and you got to travel around. It looks like it's going to heavily focus on the summons again, as it did in 6. But they go back to the medieval way to kind of, spin off Final Fantasy XIV. I just feel like that's not the direction that I would personally want. I know a lot of people are excited. I would have liked a more original world. I think it's kind of hard to go back to something that's somewhat medieval. Yes, it is changing the pace. It's been a while since a numbered game has been medieval, but like 15 was such an interesting world. I don't actually like the lore of 15 that much, like with the gods and Bahamut and the kings, but it was interesting. It was original. 13 with like the mechanical gods, the Lacine, Falsi, that was pretty original. Sin and Yevon and Ten, all this. But this seems to be more politically driven medieval fantasy. Like, yeah, it's cool that it's more mature. It looks like I think it's M-rated, or it's pushing that boundary. And some of the designs for the monsters are cool. The world itself isn't gripping me. There isn't like that hook. Like, yeah, that's it. Like, yeah, you can turn into the summons, but there's not like that one like distinguishing trait. Like, Cloud with the Buster Sword in front of the Shinra Tower, and we've done this before. We've kind of gone back to the pseudo-medieval ways, like with Final Fantasy IX, which is one of the best Final Fantasies. But we'll see. This is like a darker fantasy, and just because I'm not a huge fan of the aesthetic, maybe it'll grow on me. Maybe because like 14's aesthetic isn't really it for me. I kind of like the more anime-inspired Final Fantasies. Like my favorite are like 6 through 10. Like that era of Final Fantasy. But I'm eating well. I am getting the remakes of 7. There's rumors of a remake of 9. And of course, we got the Crisis Core remake recently. So I'm going to definitely pick this up day one and give it a shot. It looks like it's going to be a more action-focused game, which a lot of people aren't happy about. It looks like turn-based is just out. Like it is an third-person action game almost entirely now, which sounds kind of disappointing. But remember this, guys. The combat director of this just came straight from Capcom into Devil May Cry 5, which is one of the greatest action games of all time. So if you're going to do it, this is the way to do it. They're not half-assing this. They are making an action. They're going to make one of the best damn action games of all time. At least that's my vibe with when they got this director. Because if you haven't played Devil May Cry 5, that's one hell of a game. It's one of the best games of the last generation. So this is going to be a wild Final Fantasy. I wonder how it's going to do. I think it'll review well, but what will fans be? Will it be as divisive as Final Fantasy 13 will be? I think 15 is a little divisive as well, but I don't think as divisive. But I want a numbered Final Fantasy to kind of have the prestige. Like Final Fantasy 10, along with like Metal Gear Solid, is kind of still like, when you think of PS2, I think most people immediately think of Titus. And that's how I say it. I don't say Titus because that's dangerously close to titty. I think most people think of like Titus almost like right away, along with Sora and Snake. And I kind of want that to be for the PS5. Like, even though Clive really isn't doing it for me right now, maybe I want that game to be so good that when you think PS5 in 10 years, you're going to think Final Fantasy 16. So we are going to see when that launches on June 24th as of right now, which is coming pretty quick. There were multiple editions of this game as well. There were 2 special editions, a $100 edition that came with some extra bells and whistles, art book, and a map. That is the edition that I will be getting on unboxing on this channel. There was an insane 300 plus edition version. I believe it's still available, which is nuts, on the Square Enix website, a $350 edition, which after shipping came close to $400. It came with everything in the regular collector's edition, with the addition of a statue of Phoenix fighting Ifrit. And while I love Phoenix and Ifrit, I don't know how much I'm going to like this game. And Phoenix and Ifrit aren't really if it was like Bahamut and it was like an amazing looking Bahamut, maybe, but this I just couldn't. $400 for that. That's kind of insane. I think most people agreed because it hasn't sold out. Most Square Enix Collector's Editions sell out at night, but that did not. That price is just a little much for what it is. But look forward to the unboxing and discussion of that game, of the Collector's Edition in particular, when that drops in June 24th. And that's the first half of the year covered, guys. That's pretty nuts. But like I said, we have some nebulous games coming out, games we don't really know the release date of just yet. And this is let's talk about 2 of those real quick. 2 or 3 of those, rather. One of them is a sequel to this game here, Tekken 7, the long-awaited Tekken 8. I believe this game originally came out in arcades back in 2015, Tekken 7. And Tekken 7 has been a runaway success. Yes, it has been a long time, but this is now the highest selling Tekken, surpassing Tekken 3, which they never thought they would do. Given that Tekken 3 was only on one console and this was like on multiple PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, it's still impressive. This game was supported for a very long time and ended up being probably the most feature-rich Tekken game, with I think like 40, pushing 50 characters near the end, with some amazing guest characters like Geese Howard from the Fatal Fury franchise, Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. Weird, but very cool with a cool stage. Akuma from Street Fighter being integral to the plot of this game, the story of this game. Kind of a remnant from the Street Fighter Cross Tekken days from the gen prior to that. Then you had a weird, just weird additions like Negan from The Walking Dead. Whatever. I mean, it's kind of stupid, but it's just wacky and memorable, right? So you had like some great, like I said, Geese, Noctis, Kuma, Negan, along with most of the returning cast of prior Tekken games. One or two that aren't back, but like almost everyone, everyone's favorite back, along with some great additional characters. Like Fakram Ram from Thailand and Leroy Jenkins from America, as well as the Prime Minister of Poland, who ended up being one of my favorite characters, one of the last characters released for the system, and the return of Kunimitsu near the very end. I think she was the last character released for this game, and continued support with things like Tekken Bowling and what have you, great customization features. Tekken 7 was really great. It got me more into the Tekken franchise than I ever have. And Tekken 8 looks to be great. Tekken 8 looks to be the culmination of, at least in the story, of my favorite character Kazuya and his son Jin. 7 focused on Kazuya versus Heihachi, and Jin was kind of a side character, and Akuma was a big part of this. But it looks like we're getting Jin versus Kazuya, and let me tell you, it's going to be Jin who wins, right? Kazuya is my favorite, but Kazuya takes a lot of L's, and looks fantastic. I believe it is coming out on both Xbox and PlayStation. They've shown off a number of characters. Of course, Paul Phoenix and Nina Williams are returning. No surprise there. And even though Heihachi died at the end of 7, I bet he's in the game, guys. So definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, we don't have a solid release date on that. But imagine that, the same year, Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8. Not really competitors. One's a 3D fighter and one's a Street Fighter. One's a 2D fighter. So if you want 3D, go to Tekken. If 2D, go to Street Fighter. I think you can have both in the same space, and I think they're friendly enough. Like they share characters like Akuma and Street Fighter Cross Tekken's roster. I think this is going to be a great year for these two fighting games, and I also strongly pity any other fighters coming out this year. Unless you are Mortal Kombat, which is kind of an entirely different audience, like any other new fighting games coming out this year, don't. Because Street Fighter 6 is going to be incredible. Tekken 8 is most likely going to be incredible. Don't try to compete with these, because everyone is going to be playing these games, putting a lot of time into these, including myself. So yeah, Tekken 8 sometime this year. It looks like it's pretty done. I'm going to say in the later half of this year, because we've already seen a lot of gameplay and a bunch of characters. Tekken 8, looking forward to it. Let me know, what do you think? What are you going to see to this? Yeah, and what did you think of Tekken 7? What did you think of the new characters? I want to know, because I really love this game. And then, mentioned earlier, sometime the winter of 2023, which could also bleed into the early part of 2024, we will be getting the sequel to this game right here. We will be getting the sequel to the Final Fantasy VII Remake, part 2, as it were. Now, yet again, I've said this in many videos. This is a divisive game. If you haven't played it, you may not know why, but if you have, you know that this game's ending, let's just say there are some differences from the original. And some people weren't a big fan of it. I was. Final Fantasy VII is in my top favorite games of all time. I've played the original through dozens of times, or quite a few times. And I think what Square pulled in this was ballsy. And I respect it. Sometimes I don't think things like this work out. And, it's not a straight remake, but what they ended up doing is something for veterans. I think this is not the ideal way to play Final Fantasy VII if you've never played it before. I still think that's the original game. But for fans like myself, people who grew up playing 7, who watched and who waited for and then watched Advent Children and Advent Children Complete, played Dirge's Cerberus and Crisis Core, I think this is just for them. And much of the way that Kingdom Hearts 3 was only really for people who had stuck with the series, I don't think, even though it was somewhat marketed like this, it was marketed as a straight remake of 7, it kind of was a trick that pissed some people off, that this is more for the fans. And I can't really go into particulars of why without spoiling it, but as a fan, as a veteran, I feel like I'm being catered to. What am I going to say? Oh, new fans are going to be mad because you changed things. They won't know any better. And I'll just say, all right, look, 7 is available on everything, go play it. But I feel like the developers knew that, They didn't want to do the same thing again. They wanted to give the fans who had not only just played the old game, but had stuck with this franchise through things like Last Order, Crisis Core, and Advent Children. Like, these are for, like, this is a game for the mega fans. And yeah, I think there's some downsides to it, but I feel rewarded as a veteran. I really do. Yeah, they pulled kind of a fast one, but when you look at it, who did they pull that for? They pulled it for the people who have been paying attention, the nerds of this. I'm one of them, and what am I going to say? I liked what they did. It was a little clunky in some spots, but man, I really enjoyed it. And then, later on, this game would be upported to the PS5, much better version. There is no loading. By the way, if you've only played this on the PS4, check it out on the PS5 if you can. There are no loading times. It probably would shave 3 to 5 hours of the game off in total. And they did a really good expansion, PS5 only expansion, with the intermission, the interlude where you play as Yuffie kind of during the events of this game. Yuffie's like my least favorite Final Fantasy VII character, but I love that expansion. It was really good, and they added some very cool things to the main game with that expansion as well. So I do suggest you check that out. So with that, Final Fantasy VII has been getting love. One of my favorite games of all time, period, full stop. One of my favorite games of all time ever. Crisis Core very recently got a remaster, re-release on the PlayStation, Xbox, Switch consoles, and it's great. Other than the terrible voice acting of the main character, Zack, and switch it to Japanese, this remake was fantastic. Remaster, whatever you want to call it. It streamlined the combat, and little extra bells and whistles were added here and there. Crisis Core is one of my favorite games ever. It was trapped on the PSP for many years. I'm glad more people were able to enjoy it. It reviewed well. It seems to have sold well. So I'm eating well as a Final Fantasy VII fan. And yet again, I think this game is important to understand what's going to be going on with the sequel to this game, Final Fantasy VII Part 2 Rebirth. I think it's all leading up to this game. And we've seen a tidbit of the game, very quick tidbit, but I'm excited for it. I want to see where they're going with this. This is an ambitious project. Like, I was originally very upset that Final Fantasy VII's remake was going to be diced into parts. I wanted it all at once. I think everyone did. Episodic games aren't particularly successful, and it sucks waiting, and you might forget some things in the middle. And this is not a short wait. It's been 3 years since this launched in April 2020. I remember in the heart of the pandemic, this game launched. But because of that, we've been living in a zeitgeist, an ethos of Final Fantasy VII. Everyone's always talking about it. It's on the tips of everyone's mind. And I think that's a really good thing, to live in this hype bubble where we don't know everything. Here's a counter example. Kingdom Hearts 3, not the best Kingdom Hearts game. That'd probably still be 2, the remakes of 2, closely followed by Birth by Sleep's remake. But Kingdom Hearts 3 was still solid enough. It came out after a decade of waiting for a numbered game, and it was just gone from the public consciousness very quickly. This happens a lot, unfortunately. The gaming world goes much faster. No matter how long you wait for a game, no matter how big it is, once it comes out, it's kind of out, and it's kind of sad. Like, it leaves the public consciousness, the zeitgeist, pretty quickly. Like, where's the new thing? But now with this episodic release, we were living in the age of Final Fantasy VII. It's been 3 years since one, but the year after it came out, we got the Yuffie expansion, which was very good. And then the year after that, we got the Crisis Core remake, which is tying into it, which is very good. And now the year after that, we're going to get that release. It has been just great to be in the age of Final Fantasy VII, which we really haven't been in a decade, ever since, over a decade, 15 years since Crisis Core and Advent Children. We've had Sephiroth joining Smash Brothers. Final Fantasy VII is on the tips of everyone's tongue, as it should be, because though many of us, like people my age, like I'm 33 years old, like we grew up Final Fantasy VII always being around, like a lot of newer gamers haven't. If you were born in the year 2000, you're now a full adult. You may have no idea why this game is so special. You may not know, like Sephiroth is probably right after, I'd say, Bowser and Eggman, kind of maybe even more so than Ganondorf, like one of the most legendary antagonist villains in video game history, full stop, period. But you may not know why, because it's not like a continuing series like Mario, Zelda, or Sonic, right? And it's great for new people to understand why. They're going to go back and check it out. Final Fantasy VII deserves it. It doesn't need to be your favorite Final Fantasy, but to deny that game, original game's quality and this game's quality is beyond me. The combat was great. It looked good voice acting, good choices. So I am so excited to see what Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Part 2 is going to be. Like I said, it's taking away from the hype for Final Fantasy XVI. There's no two ways about it. Because we already know at least the combat and visuals are really, really good in Final Fantasy VII Remake. So yeah, let's see what's going to happen with this. When this drops in kind of randomly in winter of this year. Like I said, that could bleed into early next year, but I could see this being a holiday title. That's kind of what I want it to be. I believe it's a PlayStation console exclusive at launch, much like the Part 1. But let's see. And I want to know what you guys think. If you haven't commented on my prior videos, what do you think of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? And you know what? Go ahead with spoilers. I don't care. Talk about everything, whatever you want. In the comment section, and just be forewarned if you haven't played Remake. What did you guys think of the remake? What do you think of the original? What did you think of the Crisis Core remake / remaster? And what are you looking forward to in Part 2 Rebirth when it finally launches? And yeah, that's kind of it, guys. There's some other titles I have my eye on this year, like Koei Tecmo's Wo Long Falling Dynasty, which is kind of a Chinese-inspired Souls-esque game from the makers of Neo and Neo 2, which I played a demo of earlier this year that has a nebulous 2023 release. That's looking pretty solid. Like I said, there's like Pikmin 4 and the Advance Wars is finally coming out on Switch. There's some smaller titles, but these are the main titles that I'm looking forward to. And there's quite a lot. Look at that. We're getting major releases of Resident Evil, Mega Man, Zelda, Final Fantasy, Street Fighter, Tekken, Metroid. These are some of gaming's most beloved franchises, and they're all getting a new game this year or some representation. And I think that's fantastic. The last year or two have been really good with games, I must say, but this generation has been a slow start, not only due to the pandemic, but obviously availability of consoles due to that. And of course, the first couple of years of a console's life always kind of suck. I mean, if you look back, 2017 was the really the first great year for the PlayStation 4. There were good games prior, but they were kind of far and few between. But look at 2017's release schedule. It was absolutely incredible. So maybe we're finally approaching that for the PS5, Xbox Series X generation. And as the Switch is kind of sunsetted, because this thing's getting long in the tooth, but they're still kicking with things like the NSL servers. Let's see what they bring to the table in 2023. It's already off to a pretty good start with some titles, like I said, like Theatrhythm, Final Barline, and Metroid Remastered, Metroid Prime Remastered. But let's see what's yet to come. It's going to be an exciting year, guys. I love having things to look forward to. I love looking forward to sharing these things with you as I unbox them and talk about them. Let me know. What are you looking forward to? What do you want to see on this channel? Maybe I can cover it. Maybe I mentioned it. Maybe I didn't. Let me know. What games are you looking forward to the most in this year, 2023? And thank you so much for listening to me ramble about my interest and what I'm looking forward to and what's going to be upcoming on this channel. As always, I really appreciate it. My favorite thing about this is engaging with you guys in the comments. So yet again, thank you so much. My name is Mike. This has been Chip Damage, and please take care.